I spent years trapped in tutorial hell. I watched video after video thinking that I was leveling up, but every time I tried to make my own game, my mind went blank. It wasn't that I wasn't smart enough, it was that I was learning the wrong way. And the day I finally understood why tutorials don't actually teach you game development, everything clicked for me. I built my first game, learned faster in a few months than I did in years before that, and I just released my second game. So in this video, I'll show you exactly how to break out of tutorial hell and how to start your first real project without getting stuck halfway through. The main and biggest reason why we fall into tutorial hell isn't like some external thing like the suit people trying to like force us to get stuck. That's like part of the reason, but it's not the main reason. The main reason is something that's internal, and it's the illusion of progress. And in research, that's called illusion of competence. Because tutorials, that's a form of passive learning. Because in learning, we have two types. We have passive learning, which is watching tutorials, and we have, guess what? Active learning. And that's where we actually do things with our own brain. That's where we do things actively, like taking notes, building things, solving problems, just doing something actively with at least partially the intent of learning. But you can probably see which one of these are going to be easier, which one of those are going to like feel the best. The hard thing with like solving problems where you have to use your own brain, or tutorials where you can just put your feet on the desk, you can lay down in your chair like this and then just watch it passively. Which one of those do you think are the easiest and which one of those do you think are the hardest? Well, obviously it's going to be active learning. That's going to be the hardest thing. And if you know anything about like humans, we don't want to do hard things. That's very like basic human things. We don't like hard things. So I talked a little about this illusion of progress before, and this illusion of progress and this thing that passive learning is very easy, those things like tie very closely together. Because when things are both easy and we have this illusion of progress, like we think we're learning more than we are actually doing, because that's what passive learning does. This has been researched. When we have both of these things together, yeah, we're going to do it. And we're going to think that it's productive. We're going to think that it's like the best way. And this might be like subconsciously because it's easy. So we don't want to think that this isn't the best way because it's like super easy to just watch a tutorial over and over because it's very easy. It's not hard. We don't like use our own brain. Or you can even like consciously think that tutorials is the best way to learn because you don't have enough information or education about how we actually learn. So you just have this false belief that tutorials is the best thing. But let me tell you, this has been researched so many times and even proven in my own journey. Like I was stuck in tutorial hell for months or maybe even years because it's been like kind of on and off. So we can say years. And I'd constantly watch tutorials, but every time I tried to like do something myself in a game engine, like make something, my mind went completely blank. I couldn't do anything. And why is that? Well, it's because when we do these passive things like watching tutorials, we get a recognition of something, but we don't get the understanding. So recognition and understanding, that's two completely different things. Recognition, that's where you can look at a player movement script and you can say, yeah, this is a player movement script. Okay, I know that. That's recognition. That's what tutorials teaches you. Whilst understanding, that's something completely different. Understanding, that's where you can actually think of a player movement system like in your brain, and you can actually like make it without having any external resources. And that's because you just know the in and outs of how to make a player movement script. You like actually have a thorough understanding of how to make a player movement script. But if you only had a recognition, you couldn't actually make it because you don't understand it like in and out. You understand how like the different things work. You don't understand the specific lines of code. You can just recognize that this is a player movement script. So in reality, you didn't learn that thing. Well, you learned to recognize it, but you didn't learn to like understand it and actually use it practically. So what's the point? Just to give you an example so you just understand this 100%. Imagine you're watching a piano tutorial on YouTube for like, we can say for like 5 hours long. Like you could just watch the entire video, not doing any like active things like taking notes, trying to practice yourself. If you only like watch the video, you would probably think that you have a very good understanding of playing the piano. Like you think that if you had a piano in front of you, it would be like super easy because you know all the theory. But Could you even play a single song? Would you be able to do it? No, you wouldn't. Maybe like the very, very basics, because, well, it's not that hard. But you wouldn't be able to do like nearly anything compared to if you actually use those 5 hours to actually just practice piano. Maybe like you watched a 10-minute introduction video to the piano, so you know the basics, and then you just spent the rest of your time actually playing the piano, trying to get feedback from like someone that you know, or ChatGPT, or like when you struggle with the problem, you search the problem online. So you get feedback based upon that problem that you actually encountered when you did something active. Like if you actually did that, like play the piano, trying to get feedback all the time, but actually trying to like just trying and failing basically. If you just did that, you'd learn so much more than if you just watch a 5-hour piano tutorial on YouTube and not doing anything. But as I said, you would think that you could be able to like play the piano perfectly because you have so much recognition about the piano, which you are going to forget, by the way, because when you just recognize something, you're not going to remember it for the rest of your life. But like for like 30 minutes after, you would probably have like a huge recognition about the piano, but you would not be able to have any understanding. You wouldn't be able to play anything. And that applies to game development as well. So if you just stop watching tutorials, like I did, I watched tutorials for years, and I just said to myself, well, this doesn't work. I'm not learning anything. I'm just going to build my first game because I already have like a lot of recognition. So I can struggle through like making my first game. I could do that. So that's what I did. I made my first game. It was bad, sure, but I learned so many things. I learned 100 times more than I ever did with any tutorial could. And if you've been stuck in tutorial hell for like a long period of time, you can just start doing this immediately. Start experimenting in the game engine. Start to struggle with problems. Actually, like do something that's hard and not go on YouTube immediately. Don't ask ChatGPT immediately when you like encounter a problem. Try to like have a desirable difficulty, something that's like a mild struggle for you. That has been researched both in myself and like officially by some nerds, some scientists. That's the best way to have like a mild struggle when you're learning something. That's where you actually have to use your own brain, you have to think, and you might even like want to not do it because it's hard, and that's when you know it's like a good level of difficulty. That's when you like don't want to do it anymore. Because as I said in the beginning, our brain doesn't like hard things, so that's how you know. Just to summarize what I just said, we learn when we struggle, we don't learn when things are easy, and you need to struggle, you need to like make something, build something, and then you can get feedback from that. So you can, for example, make a little script that does something like word mechanic. Then you can paste it into ChatGPT. Don't say you're an expert. Make sure to say that you are a beginner and you want beginner feedback. And then like ChatGPT, or like preferably if you have someone else that you know, they can give you feedback on the code. They can give you feedback on the project. And that's going to be like the best loop to be in. Make something that's mildly difficult, get feedback on it, and then iterate. That's the best loop to be in. Just measure things in things that you built, not in how many hours you've been on the computer, and especially how many hours you watched, because that's not in any way a good way to measure productivity. Measure productivity in how many things you built, how many errors you've encountered, because we learn from our failures, how many errors you encountered, how many scripts you made, how many lines of code that you made. That's how you should measure your productivity. And now you might ask, when do we use the tools then? Because obviously you can't just like experiment forever. You have to like get new ideas, learn new concepts. And yeah, that's true. And I can define that in like one sentence. That's that you're going to use tutorials as scaffolding for understanding. That's the best definition I could possibly give you. Use tutorials for scaffolding for understanding. Don't use tutorials for like expecting to understand something. Use it as a scaffolding to actually be able to understand that thing. So you can probably like see the difference. If I'm going to learn like how to make a player movement script, like something very simple. If I were going to make a player movement script, I could like possibly watch a tutorial about like the player movement script, like the theory, might like more of an overview, someone that actually explains what they're doing. And then I could like recognize, okay, so this is like the general pattern that I need to do things in. I need to get input, and then when I get input, I need to like hook that up to an event or whatever movement system you're doing. Like you have to do this one thing when you do this one thing, and you just get like a rough like recipe for how to do things, and you just get new ideas in your head, like you can recognize the things better. And after that, you go into your game engine and you're going to like try to apply the things that you just watched. Don't like expect to remember it all, because obviously you're not going to remember nearly anything, but it just gives you like some ideas and some concepts that is going to help you when you're actually building. So if you're like doing this as an experiment, for example, the player movement script, don't expect to like make it immediately. Expect to use maybe 1 hour on it, because you are a beginner. You can't expect to do like anything, and you might not think of yourself as a beginner. If I like got told this when I was in tutorial hell, I wouldn't make something small. I would make something that's much bigger, because as we talked about before, with tutorials, you get a false sense of progress, like the illusion of competence. Your ego is going to be a problem here, because you're not going to start small, and you're not going to like want to use a lot of time on something as basic as a moment script. But that's the only way to get out of tutorial hell. That's the only way to learn. We need to start somewhere and spend a lot of time on like learning specific things. Struggle with them, because in the end, you will very likely actually get at least 80% there to the results that you want. And then if you like spent like 15 minutes trying to figure out one specific thing, like if you spent 15 minutes trying to figure out how to like get player input, then you can go on Google, you can search for that specific thing. Don't search for how to make a player movement script and then you're done. What you're instead going to do, just search for the one thing that you aren't able to do, which in this case was getting the player input. You're going to just search for one specific thing, not like the entire solution, because we need to like use the things that we already know. We need to use them actively as much as possible. So the less you use the external resources and the more you actually use your internal knowledge, the tighter like that knowledge is going to sit in your brain, and the better of a developer you're going to become. So that's where we want to be. And also, I forgot to mention this, but when you're watching tutorials, make sure to implement active learning into that. So when you're watching a tutorial, for example, for like getting these concept overviews, take notes, pause the video, like maybe use twice the time as the tutorial is by just taking notes, pausing the video, experimenting, like having the engine open, experimenting, trying to like guess what they're going to do next, trying to guess the result. Just experimenting, doing all these active things while you're watching. If you do that while watching a tutorial and then you go and experiment and try to like actually understand the things, then you're going to learn so much faster if you just do that. The more you do active learning, the more you're going to learn. But obviously we need to do passive learning as well for like getting new ideas, concept overviews, things like that. Try to do as minimal as passive learning as possible and try to implement as much active learning into that as you possibly can. So now I talked a lot about like experiments and doing things and all of that. That's just the tip of the iceberg. When you're done with that, you need to prepare for your first game. You need to finish your first game. Everything, maybe you haven't even started and this doesn't apply to you because you've never been in tutorial hell for like more than a few weeks. Then you can go into Smart Indie. That's where I give you a step-by-step guide on everything you need from a complete beginner. Like I'm literally telling you how to like install the game engine, install the ID, what a game object is, going all the way through preparing, like actually preparing for your first game. So your first game becomes very failure proof and good planned, which is essential for actually finishing, by the way, to actually like finishing your first game. So you aren't like adding like useless things and all of the mistakes that can come up when you're making your first game. I cover everything and there's hours of resources in there, not even to mention all the bonuses that you get and the community that you're also getting. So no matter if you are a complete beginner or just preparing for your first game, Smart Indie gives you a step-by-step system because it has hours of video. So you can go in and you can like start at the point that applies to you. If that's interesting to you, click the first link in the description. But now I'm going to give you a step-by-step plan for like this specific skill level that you're at. The plan is for the next 2 weeks, I don't want you to watch a single tutorial, literally none. And why is that? Well, because if you're watching this video, I assume that you've been in tutorial hell for like at least a month, maybe 2, maybe even a few years. Like some of the students inside of Smart Indie has been in this for years. So if you've been in tutorial hell for like at least 1 month, no tutorials because you already have a lot of recognition about like the basic things, hopefully at least. So you have a lot of recognition and you aren't going to benefit from watching anymore, because you aren't going to benefit from more recognition when you already have a lot of it. So what I want you to do instead, try to use all that recognition that you have gained. Maybe it's like 1% of the tutorials that you watch, but at least it's something. I want you to start extremely small, like move a player upwards, jump, like small experiments like that. That's where I want it to be, because that's how we start learning. So this is a step-by-step plan. I'm going to tell you very specifically what you're going to do today and in the next coming weeks. So what you're going to do first is that when you watch this video, I want you to like open Unity or your game engine. Not anyone uses Unity, obviously, but your game engine. I want you to open your game engine, and I want you to experiment with one single thing in code that you can do. Maybe it's just one line of code like debug.log. Maybe it's like get player input and then you write a debug.log or a log statement. Okay, do that. That's awesome. And then you experiment with different things. Try to like move the code from like awake to start to update. Like for example, just move it around. That's just an example. Just experiment. Try to like break things. Try to just use things that you have recognized before in the tutorials or whatever else you might have used. I want you to think of this like an exam, and I want you to just show everything that you can do. So if you can do like 5 lines of code, try to implement all those 5 lines of code into one project and try to like make something. Like it might be like a player moment, debug.log, it might be delta time, whatever. And then you're going to like smash that into one project, one experiment, and you're going to make like a single playable experience. Like obviously it's going to be very bad, but it's just something. Just use the knowledge that you have. And then after that, you're going to think of the next natural step. So for example, if you made a player moment, try to make like a health system, like a very simple health system or a stamina system. And then you're going to search online for like not the specific like thing that you want to achieve, like not how to make a stamina system, but you're going to search for like specific things and try to use as much knowledge or like guessing as you possibly can. So if you, for example, know how to make variables, okay, make variables. Do that. If you know how to make a function, make a function. And then what you're going to put inside that function, you might not know. So what you're going to do, so you're first going to like guess, try to figure something out. And if you think that's correct, okay, then you've done it. Then go on to the next step. So just do that. If you're stuck or you like don't know what to do, you've tried for like 15 minutes, doesn't work, then sure, go on Google. Don't use YouTube for this. Just use Google, use official documentation like Godot, Unreal, Unity documentation, or Stack Overflow. Use something like that, preferably official documentation, because that's going to be like the most active learning thing that you can do. It's not like easy, it's still a mild struggle, but you have the solution there. Like in the documentation, it's going to tell you like everything you need to know about that thing you're trying to make, but it's not going to tell you like how to implement it. So you have the solution, you just have to figure it out. So that's like a mild struggle, which we talked about before. That's the most, that's the best way to actually learn. So I want you to do this for like 1, 2, maybe 3 days. Try to make like one small experiment with like tons of things that you kind of know how to do, but also like the next natural steps for like the things that you have already done. So you're going to use as much of your own knowledge as possible, while when you're trying to figure new things out, so that's like a natural extension to the experiment that you're making. You're going to search online, use official documentation or Stack Overflow or things like that. Just text, not like guides, and you're going to search for specific things. So that's the plan. That's everything you need to know. Just do this plan like multiple times. Try to make like a few projects like in the coming weeks, and actually try to use the things that you have already done. So try to use like spaced repetition. Try to use the knowledge that you already have as much as possible, because it's very easy to do things like one time and you understand it very well, but then just forget it afterwards, like after 1 day or so. So it's very important that you try to use as much of the things that you learned as humanly possible and as often as possible. So just keep that in mind when you're making experiments. And I'm not going to waste any more time of yours on YouTube. I wanted to close down everything. I wanted to go into your game engine. I wanted to do the things that we just talked about, and don't watch any more of my videos now, honestly. I don't recommend that. And also, if you want this process like step by step and release your first game within only 60 days, even if you're stuck in tutorial hell right now, complete beginner, 60 days, that's all it takes. You can click the first link in the description and it's going to be worth it for you 100%, I promise. So thank you for watching.